And I thought it might be a good time for me to talk a little bit about separation of powers, why it's important, why it's eroding, what can happen, and what needs to be done about it. Now, anyone, any lawyer who's attended law school learns this very early on. And the framers of the Constitution 250 years ago knew how important it was to have separation of powers. You have the executive branch, which is the president, and then everything under the executive branch. You have the legislative branch, which is Congress. They make the laws. And then you have the judicial branch. Okay, they rule on the laws. So you have these three, what are supposed to be co-equal branches of government. And you're saying, well, you've heard about that a lot. Everybody talks about it, but what's the big deal? Well, separation of powers is there. So one of the branches, primarily the executive branch, which is primarily the president, doesn't become a fascist, dictator, or someone who ignores the Constitution and doesn't grab the power when the president should not. And we are seeing in real time what happens when the separation of powers diminishes and shrinks. And how is that happening? Well, whether you like or dislike the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, he is quite literally a rubber stamp for whatever the president wants. He doesn't bring items to the floor if the president doesn't want it. He brings items to the floor if the president wants it. He absolutely does not do any oversight whatsoever on the president. Lets him get away with everything. Always has an excuse as to why he did what he did, and never, ever holds him accountable. And that's why there's been 2 major discharge petitions in the last month. If you know what a discharge petition is, that's when the Speaker of the House will not bring something to the floor, and after a certain number of votes, it essentially forces it on the floor, okay? It forces it because basically there's enough Republicans and Democrats who say to Mike Johnson, enough is enough. This has to come for a vote. It's too important. And of course, one of them was the Epstein files. Okay, finally that came through a discharge petition. And the other was to extend the ACA subsidies so people don't have double and triple their medical insurance every month, and 15 million people don't go off medical insurance. And why didn't Mike Johnson bring that to the floor? For one reason only. Trump didn't want him to. Okay. That's not what a Speaker of the House is supposed to do. Okay. I'm not saying that the Speaker of the House has to go out of their way to go against a president that is in their own party, but they certainly can't act essentially as a puppy, as a sheep, as a puppet. They certainly cannot erase all of the oversight that needs to be done. That's constitutionally mandated. It's not a decision whether he wants to or not. Well, anyways, you can see based on that Congress essentially doesn't, for all intents purposes, there's no oversight and basically has become subservient to the executive branch. Okay, you can see that time and time and time again. And that's not what the Constitution, what the framers wanted. Okay, They wanted if one branch had too much power, the other two pull them back in type thing, okay? Likewise, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, of course, has made a decision that the president's above the law and has immunity for basically anything and everything done within his duties. And of course, the president will say everything he does is within his duties, okay? So they have also, in some degree, become subservient to the president. And we see what's happening. Look at our country. The rest of the world is being distanced from us. They're all finding other avenues to sell their products. They're not capitulating to the tariffs. They're finding their own path. And look what's happening in our country. Because of all this, the economy's gone way down. The prices of everything has gone way up. Trump is making this an authoritarian government. Democracy is disappearing. And one big reason for that is the separation of powers is woefully missing. So the idea is that when midterm elections come about, and hopefully the Democrats take control of the House, there will no longer be a subservient Congress to the president. They will have oversight and accountability. And of course, the president knows that, which is why he's tried to cheat and have more representatives in various states by unconstitutionally redistricting the states to absolutely benefit the Republicans. So when all's said and done, separation of powers is a very important constitutional principle. That's not just theory. It's not just out there in the ether, having scholars discuss it. It is there to prevent an authoritarian takeover of the U.S. government and to prevent fascism. I mean, the president, as of last night, attacked Venezuela without provocation. There's still, I'm waiting for all of his lackeys to pretend why he invaded Venezuela and why he took their president and the president's wife. I'm not saying that Venezuela's president is a good guy. I'm not saying that at all. But there's a whole difference between not liking a president of a country and perhaps issuing economic sanctions against them and forcibly going in there and taking them under some guise that they have authority. And what's going to happen next week? Senate's going to vote on the war resolutions power, whether the president had authority to do that. Now, I'll tell you what's going to happen. It won't pass because not enough Republicans are willing to stand up to this president and say what he did was wrong. Okay, that's the reality. So it's just a matter of time before the separation of powers exists again, but it's getting dangerously low. And we have to make sure, as much as we can, that he doesn't just trample all over it and make it disappear for good. Because democracy's on the line. Okay? All right, well, everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend.